Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Darren Lee, and I'm a researcher at the Korean Institute for International Economic Policy. I will be your host for today's breakout session of this year's Global Career Forum. Breakout session. Due to linguistic barriers, this session will be conducted only in English. However, we will provide simultaneous interpretation for today's session. Please take advantage of the devices in front of you. For those watching on our YouTube live stream, you can choose which video to watch, depending on your preferred language. This session will be a panel discussion with the leadership of international organizations here deployed in the Republic of Korea. To start this session, I will introduce our distinguished guests. First, please give a warm round of applause to our chairperson, Haegu Chung, of the National Research Council of Economics, Humanities, and Social Science. Mr. President, Mr. Chairperson, please stand. Let's give Next, I will introduce Dr. Gambold Basanev of UNSCAP, the Director of UNSCAP East and North Asia Office. Then, please welcome Ms. Ann Eupiner, the Acting Director of UNDP Seoul Policy Center. Welcome. Ms. Ha Young-chun, representative of UNHCR representative to Korea. Last but not least, Ms. Marian Yoon, the Director of WFP Korea Office. Chairperson Haegu Chung of the National Research Council. Let's invite him to the stage to say a few words to everyone who put their efforts to organize this session. Chairperson Haegu Chung, please come to the stage. Everyone, give a warm round of applause to Mr. Chung.
여러분 안녕하십니까? 경제인문사회연구회
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. This is Chung Haegu of the National Research Council for Economics, Humanities, and Social Studies. We are here at this session for the solidarity and cooperation with the international community with Korea as a global pivotal state. And I would like to thank all the distinguished guests for being here today with us. Now, as the COVID-19 pandemic recedes from us throughout the world, what we are now witnessing are two distinct phenomena. One is the powerful state-led conflicts and confrontation are becoming more and more pronounced. For example, there is the strategic competition between the US and China, and there's also the Russia and Ukrainian war. So we see this post-globalization world order where the powerful nations are leading this competition. And another is with the COVID-19 sweeping through the globe, inequality and wealth gap are worsening in different parts of the world. For example, through the COVID-19, we see that more of the wealth has been concentrated in the already wealthy. And the population in abject poverty living under $1 a day had been on decline before COVID-19, but since COVID-19 we have seen an increase again. Now then, amidst the global circumstances, Korea is a country of freedom, peace, and prosperity. How we are going to reset our relations as a global pivotal state with other countries is going to be very important. Korea needs to pursue value-based international policies. But also, of course, on one hand, we need to pursue the values of freedom and liberty on their own, but then they also have to go hand in hand with peace and prosperity. And that is why for Korea, we need to find the kind of international policy that would seek a balance among freedom, peace, and prosperity. And also for Korea, unlike other developed countries, Korea was a developing country for not for a too long a period and has become a developed country. And as such, based on its experience of being a developing country, it is aware of the lessons and also the challenges that the developing countries face. And also the development aid from the developed countries has been instrumental in helping Korea continue with its development and growth. So that also places Korea in the position to provide the same cooperation. So as Korea continues with its relations with other countries as a global pivotal state, I believe that these are some of the factors and the history that we must remember. Now, in this session, as we discuss Korea's new role in the global stage, I hope that we can also keep these in mind. Thank you very much for your attention.
So before we move on, I'd like to give a short briefing on this session. What's this session about? Title is Solidarity and Cooperation with the International Community with Korea as a Global Pivotal State. In 2019, this forum was launched as a consolidated body to support the government's international cooperation activities. GKF has been actively engaged in seminars, forums, fairs, and visits as a platform for institutions engaging in international cooperation and development in Korea. In 2020, when the world faced the pandemic, the Global Korea Fair was held under the theme of Korea, a leading country contributing to world peace, prosperity, and sustainable development. It was an occasion to share the best examples of international cooperation by the Republic of Korea to combat the crisis and to seek divisions and strategies for Korea to advance to a world-leading country. In 2021, the Global Korea Fair was held as a flagship event of international development and cooperation. This year, we are under the theme of solidarity and cooperation with international community with Korea as a global pivotal state. So, moderating this panel, I would like to invite Dr. Jae-sung Kwak. Sir, please rise and come to the stage. Dr. Kwak, everyone give a round of applause to Dr. Kwak. Dr. Kwak is a professor at the Graduate School of Pan-Pacific International Studies of Kyung University. He has taught international development cooperation and will be our moderator for this session. Doctor, please come to the stage. Gambold and Hae-kyung, Mariam, please come to the stage as well. Everyone, give a round of applause to our panels. Dr. Kwak, without further ado, Dr. Kwak, I will give you the stage.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the special session. We, along with the KIEP and then organizing committee, have designed this session to have a general consensus among the international organizations who knows a lot about Korea. So they've been invited with very special purpose of exchanging ideas, sharing vision with Korea with regard to our international development strategy. Members of this special session are from UNSCAP, UNDP, and UNICEF, UNHCR, and WFP. And many of them already have exposed to Korea's international development. They are resident in Korea, even they are Koreans. And however, we'd like to see their vision and their suggestions over how the Korea's international development should be evaluated in the future as a global pivotal state. As you all know, South Korea has started its activities of international development some 30 years ago. However, we think still the Korea is a new kid on the block. And we have a lot to be desired in our design principle and also our capacity for implementing the international development activities. We'd like to cooperate more with the international partners like those UN agencies. So this is a very valuable opportunity for us to listen from our partners how they see the Korea's international development and what would be the suggestions for future Korea's ODA development from their angle. Each of the agencies have special visions and mandate. So based on this, I think they will give us a very colorful presentation over Korea's direction. So without any further ado, I'd like to invite one by one to give them opportunity for present what they think about Korea's international development and about what are the vision for cooperation with us. Okay, Gandalf, would you like to start? From UNSCAP. He's the frequent visitor and he's the Korea diplomat and also, so he has a long history of the experience and international cooperation over the international development. Okay, please start.
Thank you, Professor Kwon.
While you're speaking, you can take off your mask, like myself. Yeah, it'll be more comfortable. Yeah.
Thank you, Professor Kwok, and I'm delighted to join this breakout session. So our discussion indeed is very timely, coming soon after several the global events successfully completed last week or so, G20 and APEC 2022 and COP 2027. So against this backdrop of outcomes of these events, so I just want to share a few observations from the perspective of UNSCAP, which is the most inclusive intergovernmental platform to develop the cooperation in pursuit of sustainable development challenges. Korea's steadfast effort to sustain the increase of volume of ODA throughout the years is a very strong and concrete signal to become a pivotal state in the development cooperation community. So specifically, now the direction, so further to bolster its role in this community. So I would assume that Korea needs to strengthen its development assistance to address development challenges that are cross-sectorial as well as transboundary in nature. As you see, the recent crises, pandemic, COVID-19 pandemic, or Ukraine, the conflict, or this climate crisis. So none of these issues now no longer under purview of any single sector or within the boundary of any country. So here, Korea has a comparative advantage already in ICT connectivity, in the health sector, and as well as environmental, the champion on climate action. So in terms of the principles, so where Korea could address the universality of freedom, peace, and prosperity, while taking into account the unique history and values of each recipient nation. So my observation is Korea could balance between its pursuit of the universality of freedom, peace, and prosperity and its development assistance and the recipient country's unique national circumstances is to anchor program goals and objectives on international norms, standards, frameworks, and agreements, because UN, the principle of UN is to facilitate the member countries, both the donor countries, the recipient countries, strongly adhere to the sustainability principles, which is the backbone of multiple international agreements, frameworks, initiatives, and platforms. And in addition, by anchoring bilateral assistance on internationally accepted principles with multilateral support, so Korea may be able to facilitate strengthening the linkage between its bilateral development assistance with multilateral cooperation mechanisms. And this would further cement its role as a pivotal, global pivotal state in development cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Very insightful, ice-breaking. Thank you, Gandalf. I think your speech is extremely useful for us in that you have valued the cross-sectoral approach and transboundary strategy in the development cooperation of Korea. Because now everything is blended and holistic approach is highly treasured for development effectiveness sake. At the same time, the universal value of freedom and peace and prosperity is perfectly in line with UN's value proposition about that. So in this regard, there will be a lot of cooperation between the Korea and the United Nations agencies, especially multilateral aid, and also there is also newly rising modality of a multi-buy project that Korea's bilateral funding can be channeled to the multilateral agencies for more efficiency and effectiveness sake. So thank you for your good ice breaking. Now, shall we move to the UNDP now? Anne, please.
Thank you so much, Professor Kwak. Dear colleagues, esteemed guests, I hope you can hear me well. I know it's in the late hour of the day, so really looking forward to speaking to you today. I will be discussing how the Republic of Korea can strengthen its support towards the humanitarian development peace or HDP nexus, especially since it is one of the areas defined by Korea as an area of cooperation with UNDP in its recently published multilateral cooperation strategy. The world today continues to endure the highest number of conflicts since the creation of the United Nations, with approximately 2 billion people residing in conflict-affected countries. Despite only composing a quarter of the global population, 73% of the world's extreme poor currently live in countries stricken with fragility. While such crises have been prevalent throughout history, the nature of violence has transformed substantially. Conflicts have become much more complex and are increasingly driven by non-traditional security threats such as climate change. This is very evident in the example of the Lake Chad conflict in Africa. Once being one of Africa's largest freshwater bodies, Lake Chad has shrunk by 90% over the last 60 years, amplifying food insecurity in the region. This has contributed to growing instability as millions were displaced from the violence generated by non-state armed groups fighting over access to diminishing resources. And as such, it is evident that non-traditional security issues such as environmental degradation must not now only be considered, but even be prioritized in fragile settings. Against this backdrop, the United Nations Sustainable Development Group has recently reformed the United Nations Development System. And at the heart of the reform lies the HDP nexus. This conceptual framework reflects the need to better coordinate efforts between the humanitarian, development, and peace-building sectors to facilitate a more multidimensional approach to achieving sustainable development, especially in the countries in the global south that are emerging from or facing conflict. So in this context, it is very commendable that the Republic of Korea has continuously increased and seeks to continue to increase its ODA commitments towards this issue, especially given the global economic challenges that all countries face at the moment. Why is this so commendable? It is because ODA represents a large portion of the financial resources available to these countries. In fact, in extreme fragile contexts, development cooperation contributions comprise 69% of all external finance. At the same time, there is room for further improvement. As of 2020, Korea provided $849 million in support to fragile countries, which represents approximately 38% of its total aid budget. This is lower than the 60% provided by other OECD-DAC donors. These relative shortcomings can at least partially be attributed to the fact that Korea does not fully make use of the multilateral system. In fact, only 20% of the support provided to fragile contexts is channeled through multilateral channels. This can be compared to 38% provided to multilateral organizations by other OECD-DAC donors. So accordingly, Korea could further increase its support towards the HDP nexus-related issues through working more closely with international organizations. Engaging in multilateral partnerships on the HDP nexus would also enable Korea to explore synergies with other areas that it prioritizes in its ODA interventions, such as the environment or climate change. This is important because although only contributing to just 4% of global emissions, fragile countries experience nearly 1/3 of climate change-related disasters across the world. Despite this, currently only 10% of Korea's support towards fragile countries include environmental considerations, in comparison to 53% provided by other OECD-DAC donors. So, in this regard, having recently released its crisis offer, UNDP stands ready to support Korea in enhancing and meeting its HDP nexus commitments through building new and scaling up existing partnerships that support partner countries to break the cycle of fragility, get ahead of the crisis curve, and invest in hope and essential longer-term development right from the start. In fact, UNDP is very well positioned to provide such support towards this issue, given that it uses over half of its annual budget to support fragile countries through service offers that not only include environmental issues, but also those related to other Korean priority areas, such as health and digitalization. Allow me to conclude by just emphasizing that this is exactly what Goal 17 of the 2030 Agenda seeks to illustrate. Only by acting in partnership will we be able to tackle the profound universal development challenges we are facing today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Such an insightful remarks, Anne. And I think we now better understand what and how the UNDP engages over the global challenges, possibly the biggest challenges on fragility, especially with the HDP Nexus approach, humanitarian development and peace. And traditionally, UNDP was specialized in more on DRR, disaster risk reduction. And this is one of the technical area in addressing those natural disasters or over the security issues. And however, this approach has been, I think, a good seed for developing towards the HDP nexus. Even though HD and P has been approached separately without much of an interrelated holistic approach in the past, but now everybody understands they are not independent at all. So we should find a common approach for how those humanitarian aid can lead to the long-term sustainable development, and the peace definitely is a firm ground for the sustainability at all. So in this regard, we are, I think, more than committed to participate in UNDP's efforts, and a lot to be desired in the future. But I'm still ashamed that your numbers, the Korea is not fully utilizing this platform in approaching this highly technical and also fairly difficult area for Korea's bilateral approach. So I hope our multilateral partnership with the UNDP in this field can be strengthened and improved in the near future. Thank you very much, Anne. Okay, so now let's move to the two other UN agencies, and they are also focused on particular fields and areas, and they are pretty big here. Now we have representatives of UNHCR in Korea office, Ms. Chun Hae-kyung. Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Professor Kwak. You mentioned that Korea is a new kid on the block. Actually, I am a new kid in this block. I've been assigned to Korea only on 1st November. So maybe the work in the field is still very fresh in my mind. So maybe I can bring a little bit that aspect to this discussion today. And a distinguished guest and professor and my colleagues here, globally as we speak today, there are more than 103 million people who've been forced to displace due to persecution, conflict, violence, human rights violations, sometimes conflicts arising from climate change issues. So many factors displace these people. Over the last 12 months alone, UNHCR and partners, we have responded to 37 emergencies around the world. So it kind of illustrates what Anne has been just mentioning. As you well know, the Ukraine situation itself alone has driven more than 14 million people away from their homes since February. This was the fastest and largest displacement witnessed in decades. Yet, of course, as Anne also mentioned, there are many other protracted situations that are failing to capture the same level of international media and attention. So there is no doubt that the world needs stronger multilateral cooperation to tackle these multifaceted global challenges. So the subject of today's discussion, of course, cannot be more timely from our point of view. After 2 years of extensive consultations, in December 2018, the United Nations General Assembly affirmed the Global Compact on Refugees. The Compact is a framework for more predictable and equitable responsibility sharing, recognizing that sustainable solutions to refugee situations cannot be achieved without international solidarity and cooperation. During his recent visit, we had the High Commissioner Filippo Grandi visiting Seoul a few weeks back. He was very impressed by the empathy that was shown by his interlocutors in Korea, as well as by the people in the Republic of Korea. Having overcome war and forced displacement itself, Korea can relate to the humanitarian and development needs others are facing today, and that was expressed by many of the speakers today. On the ground, in the field, we really always appreciate the empathy, and I want to emphasize in this word, commitment and support coming from Korea and the people here. Given Korea's own experience and as the role and engagement of Korea in the international arena further expands, I would like to echo what Anne has just mentioned about more integrated and targeted support towards the humanitarian development and peace nexus. We see on the ground that, of course, people need humanitarian assistance, but people want their lives to be sustainable. They need livelihood. It's the same people who needs everything, unfortunately. And then in dignity, they want to be independent, right? So they don't want to forever being recipient of humanitarian assistance. So it's very important that all this, it's accompanied from the beginning and it's being strategized all together. So in this connection, I wanted to share the example of Korea's recent support that we have received for our work in Burundi, where the humanitarian and development needs of the people were considered together. And Korea has provided support to create conditions in the country of origin, which is Burundi, because Burundian refugees have been leaving the country and they are would like to return. So Korea has provided support in the country of origin so that refugees may be able to return in safety and dignity. So in December 2023, next year, the second Global Refugee Forum will take place to take stock of significant progresses made in implementing the compact I mentioned earlier. It will offer a chance to announce good practices, new pledges, engage with each other, and to form new ways of pursuing protection and solutions for refugees around the world. And as we prepare for the forum, we are confident that the Republic of Korea would come to the table with innovative pledges and proposals fit to the need of the people on the ground that would help Korea achieve its goal of becoming a global pivotal state. And I am very honored to be in this forum where those ideas will flourish, hopefully. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yeah, sharing especially the cases that our government supported in Burundi. Somehow Koreans are displaced people. My mother is a refugee from North Korea, and I'm the product of this. And also, I think somehow all the Koreans, maybe we lost the memories of Korean War. However, we have legacies. We have all the memories of the displacement here. Now, I think we should not forget this, and we should more actively engage in this part. But it's fairly difficult to directly for us to engage in the project over the displacement, especially international displacement, which is more complicated. Then we need a partnership with the UNHCR, the highly specialized and experienced organ in this regard. Thank you. I'd like to listen more about this, but later we will have a chance to hear from you again. Last but not least, world's largest humanitarian agency, WFP. Here is Miriam Yu.
Professor, thank you very much for that introduction, and to my colleagues whose messages I can only reinforce. Thanks to the professor, indeed, the World Food Programme is the largest humanitarian agency. Our mandate is to fight hunger. It's a simple mandate. Everybody needs food in order to survive. But today, we've heard that the world is faced with unprecedented needs, and this applies to the number of people who are food insecure. Every year for the past 3 years, WFP has been hitting the record in terms of how many people need our assistance, how many people we need to reach, and how much resources we need in order to get there. Now, this year alone, and we haven't ended the year yet, we've reached about 133 million people with food assistance across the world. And the numbers, this isn't enough. We're not reaching the people who we need to reach. New estimates, and estimates always being updated every few months, but the estimates now show that the number of acutely food insecure people is about 349 million this year, 349 million. That is about 200 million more than we had before COVID. So 349 million people. The drivers of this are, as mentioned already, conflict, and the number of conflicts is rising, and the number of protracted conflict is not reducing. There's climate shock or climate crisis, rampant food, fuel, and fertilizer inflation at a time when the world is still recovering from COVID. And many currencies around the world are losing in value, and people are losing their purchasing power. So these drivers are not only coming together to increase food insecurity, but they are leading to increased instability and unrest, social unrest. It's making life harder every day for the number of people who are most vulnerable. So we have a crisis that may become even worse next year. Now, we can talk about these numbers, for a long time, but let's focus on why we're here today. We have the experience of the Republic of Korea, a journey that we've spoken about many times, a story that has been celebrated by my colleagues here already, and many other stakeholders. The story of the Republic of Korea is well known because it brings a lot of hope to these countries that are struggling and facing the impact, the brunt of the different crises I mentioned today. The World Food Programme, like many other UN agencies, was here to assist the Republic of Korea after the war. The World Food Programme is actually very proud of what we did in the 20 years or so that we were here, because we see now that the Republic of Korea is using our operations, our programs in those countries where we serve to actually replicate and scale and export its own experience in very practical ways. And it's really, Korea is quite unique in the sense that in one generation, it was able to achieve the kind of transformation that others can only aspire to. So in this regard, like others, we welcome ROK's efforts, really continued efforts to raise the bar as it aims to increase its overseas development aid, ODA, despite the many, many challenges that it also faces. Now, in this regard, I think WFP sees, there are multiple areas where we can work with the Republic of Korea, but let me frame them in three main areas. And this really builds on what Anne from UNDP has said, and my colleague Hae-kyung from UNHCR, as well as Gambold. HDP nexus, it's a terminology that we hear a lot. It's a priority, a strategic priority for the Republic of Korea, and it really is important. It's for WFP. It's not a particularly new concept. Bridging humanitarian development work has always been a part of our agenda, but I think now this language is out there, it's universal, and not only that, with the support of operational agencies like WFP, I think the Republic of Korea can now really translate and operationalize its aspirations into concrete actions that are being implemented on the ground. And here, as a partner to the Republic of Korea, the World Food Programme is happy to use its extensive operational coverage, accessibility, and experience in working with local communities, especially in fragile contexts where there aren't any diplomatic offices or KIEP presence, and where we can be an extension, a partner to the Republic of Korea in making these significant investments, identifying the best practices to operationalize the HDP nexus through our operation and help the Republic of Korea champion this very important agenda. And we have multiple case studies, Afghanistan, Somalia, South Sudan, Philippines, Ethiopia, all countries where there is some level of programs that extend the whole nexus, and also opportunities to kind of understand and measure our possible contributions to peace as well. The second is climate change, and here I won't talk long, but it's clear climate crisis is accelerating the very humanitarian needs I mentioned, and immediate relief has to come first. But it cannot be the only thing that we focus on. It has to be done hand in hand with building and strengthening resilience of communities and helping them actually not only build back better, but actually withstand the risk, to manage the risk. And so this is where the World Food Programme, in all that it does in risk analysis, early warning, emergency preparedness, and now, more important than ever, anticipatory action, is going to prove to be an important partner in helping the Republic of Korea in that translation of the HDP Nexus strategy. Last but not least, I think when we talk about the Republic of Korea's development model, we're all familiar with Saemaul-undong and all of these frameworks that were tried and tested in Korea and that are really well known out there in the global market. I think, we shouldn't forget the strength of South-South and triangular cooperation. I think that the World Food Programme can offer that level of platform in extending ROK's unique experience and really offering an opportunity also to replicate this at scale. So, Professor, I will leave it there. Thank you very much.
Oh, that's so lovely. Thank you so much for guiding us the way, how we can cooperate with WFP, operationalize HDP and anticipatory actions over climate change and South-South cooperation triangulation framework, and how our experience can be channeled through multilateral platform for more effectiveness. Thank you so much for those valuable remarks here. I think we have done a good first round of already prepared speeches and remarks under each agency's perspectives on Korea's ODA strategy for the future. Now, I think we have roughly 14 minutes left. I'd like to use it very wisely, these 14 minutes. At the same time, I'd like to invite some of the people who are interested in participate in questioning and giving comments. So whoever you are ready to participate, please raise your hand and you can ask questions and give comments. Usually there is a silence, so I have always the plan B here. And now, I'd like to ask some quick questions to all of you. Many of you have, I think mostly, have experiences in partnering with the Korean government. And there must be some suggestions or recommendations on how we can be a better player as a bilateral donor in partnering with multilateral organizations. It could be process, it could be administrations, it could be modalities, or it could be the amount of money, the budgets, or it could be monitoring and evaluations, the reporting mechanisms, and all those things. I mean, we try our best. However, you know, today's keyword is a new kid. As a new kid, we are not pretty 100% sure whether we are fully matured and experienced donor, because we are latecomer as well. So we'd like to learn more, and we'd like to listen more, and we'd like to see how we can be a genuine, like a champion on the global international development. So please suggest anything that you think how we can do better in partnering with international organizations and the multilateral development. Okay, Gandalf?
Yeah, just a idea. So one of the key enablers of effective development assistance and development cooperation is the data, the accurate, comprehensive, quality, and timely data information sharing. So here, Korea's strength is, Korea is the place, the champion, on ICT development. And it's a very open, in terms of the information sharing, the most open, the platform for the world. And on the other hand, the UN has the wealth of resources, statistical data, the multiple tools, online platforms, and so then here, the Korea could be a venue, the hub, to promote this wealth of information, the science-based data, UN organizations, the funds could provide to the world to move on delivering effectively this development assistance to the countries, whatever the area is. This is the social, economic, and climate-related development. So here, I think South Korea need to build on this strength. So being as an arena of open ICT champion and supported by UN sharing the enormous the resources be built and developed over the decades. Thank you.
Okay, I think this is a wonderful suggestion, and I think we have data already, but having a data and sharing the data are two different things, and processing the data is even another level here. So how we can coordinate and synchronize data sharing system with UN agencies is one task. I think another task will be, we have piled a lot of information about Korea's international development activities in Korean language, which are not fully international yet. Now, Korean language is very popular overseas. However, it's not as popular as English. So I think there is a strong need for us to process a lot of data and information in a more globally acceptable platform here. So there is also task that we can address in this regard. And finally, probably we can share all these techniques, how to process, maintain, and how to apply this to the policy, I mean the data, for the partner countries. So in this regard, I think Korea already partnered with UNESCAP about the capacity building of data processing and data building for partner countries, especially on the disability data and social welfare system data here. So this is also very, very valuable, important suggestion. Thank you so much, Gandalf. Okay, Anne?
Thank you very much. Allow me to contribute 3 quick points to your earlier question. I think my first point is that Korea is already very much appreciated as a new donor worldwide. I think there's a blessing in disguise to be a new donor, because you are less burdened by the many mistakes many traditional donors have made in the past. You come to the table without those mistakes. What really is a blessing in disguise in many discussions. So I would actually like to very much encourage the Republic of Korea to continue pulling its weight in exactly that capacity. Korea is part of the G20. Korea is a member of the OECD DAC. You already have a very important role to play. So please do it. And needless to say that the UN system, of course, always stands ready to support you in this. This is absolutely crucial in the world today, where the global discussions seem to be dominated by bilateral interests, at a crucial moment in time where we need to pull together in solidarity to overcome complex issues. Climate change is not an environmental issue. Is the most fundamental challenge of our time today. And we cannot respond to it only from the perspective of nation countries. It has to be more. And so Korea, as a very strong supporter of multilateral cooperation, has an absolutely crucial role to play here. The Busan Forum, when Korea changed the whole global discourse, moving away from aid into development effectiveness, that was fundamental. So please, again, continue, and we will work with you, we will support you in that endeavor going forward. It is not only about the amount of financial support in terms of ODA. It is the support to the idea of multilateral cooperation as well. So I think I will leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We don't have to repeat the same mistakes as the existing donors have made. I think this echoes very important messages to us. Well, table is already set. We are ready to sit. However, at least we should able to cut the steak properly. Yeah, by international standards. But sometimes there are further mistakes by us, I have to admit. So I think still this is a learning process. That means all the information is open, all the formalities and discourses and agreements are set. We can just follow this. However, sometimes it's too much of information and too much of complexity. It could be a burden for frontline workers, executors, and implementers for us. So we still learn a lot Sometimes we make a mistake, but as you have mentioned, sooner or later we will be participating in leading the global discourses of development cooperation. Okay, thank you for the message, alarming, also encouragement. So much. Now, Haekyung-chan. Yeah.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And I echo what my colleagues have said earlier. And I think for Korea, it's a big opportunity because we can build on the experience that others have come first and Korea's own experience, right? Perhaps one area where I would like to perhaps make a suggestion is as Korea has this blueprint on the ODA and what we want to, what Korea wants to do, and the strategy and so on. I think as Korea moves forward, it would be very useful how strategically Korea balances the multilateral and bilateral cooperation, right? As you can complement the humanitarian with the development, because in many countries, and still coming from the field, you know, like maybe there was a lot of focus on bilateral and development and so on, and something happens and it has to turn to humanitarian. So how you quickly adjust to that changing environment, and because perhaps the political situation or the conflict situation has changed, you don't need to halt and lose the gains that you have contributed in progressing toward the SDGs, right? So I think perhaps sometimes not to get into too much into very granular points, but also to be able to make sure that the blueprint is flexible enough to adjust to the changing environment on the ground. That would be much appreciated, much more appreciated from the field point of view. Thank you.
Okay, the reflection of a changing environment, very critical for deciding the direction of the development cooperation strategy. In this regard, the strategic balance is always needed. And so we need a very quick and agile decision. So where and how to cooperate each other. So constant dialogue I think is needed for this between Korean government and also the multilateral agencies. Thank you so much. And finally, Miriam. Yeah.
So 50 seconds left.
Don't worry.
Very quickly, I mean, I think a lot of very important points have already been covered, so let me not repeat any of those. I think when we talk about sustainable development goals, you know, we take the private sector for granted. I think there's no development that's going to be sustainable without the absolute involvement, engagement of private sector. And that's not just from a philanthropic point of view. They need to be part of the solution. And in Korea, I mean, you know, we talk about public-private partnership, we talk about innovation, all of the opportunities on connectivity and digital offerings from this country is right there. Let's also not forget that we have human resources here. We've got some amazing talent. We've got excellent research institutes, academia, and I think that there is a lot that we can do together, the UN system, for instance, and Korea, to make those capacities accessible as well. I mentioned earlier South-South and triangular cooperation. At the end of the day, you know, solutions have to be nationally owned. And so when we talk about bilateral and multilateral assistance, you know, these have to come very much in parallel. I think with multilateral cooperation, you know, we have organizations that have been created to do certain things. And so, you know, governments like Korea could just rely more on those systems, on those entities to do what they do best. Because part of that is going to ensure accountability and also scale. But I do think that, you know, there is a lot that we underestimate when it comes to things like you know, like changing mindset, and, you know, it's not just about giving, you know, implementing a project. When you talk about development, it's got to be about, you know, values and mindsets and cultural shifts in behavior. And I think, you know, ROK has been through all of that. Republic of Korea has been through so much of that, and, you know, and it can be, it can bring a real new dimension to capacity strengthening efforts when you really try and look at the know-how that goes beyond, you know, items or, you know, programs to implement. So let me leave it at that. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. How to change the people's mindset, perception, for towards the more value-oriented strategic approach. That's always a dilemma at the same time. We need that definitely in the end, but we all know the how is difficult to achieve this stage. But we have to go for it in the end. Sometimes we were highly, I think, treasured from international society. The Korean people's highly motivated and strategically oriented and well-armed and equipped with a positive mindset, sometimes very aggressive. All this kind of cultural thing can be, I don't know, can be shared or not, but we try to motivate our partners and see how we can make the positive influence and drawing ultimately the positive change for our global citizen in the end. Right, I think we have made a very intensive and extensive a 1-hour discussion among the 4 distinguished guest members. Some questions were very challenging, but you have made a very wise response, and above all, those suggestions or recommendations were very noble, which can be channeled to our policy directly to enrich our development cooperation. Thank you very much indeed. So I'd like to thank you a lot. Appreciate for your efforts, everyone. Please give them a big round of applause. now you can go back to your seat. Now, I'd like to use just 1 or 2 minutes to finalize and wrap up today's discussion here with the 4 prominent representatives of international organizations. And I think we need a strategic balance between bilateral and multilateral development cooperation here. And what Korea can do better as a pivotal state is to cooperate with the international organizations for South-South cooperation and also the multilateral, trilateral approach. And also there was a strong demand on Korea's stacks of data and information to be shared with our partner countries, so which can be synchronized and coordinated with UN agencies as well. And above all, the humanitarian development and peace nexus approach can be well coordinated with our partner international organizations. So these are some takeaways that we have learned from today's intensive and extensive discussions of international organizations. Once more, ladies and gentlemen, please give our guest speakers and panelists a big round of applause. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Gov, for the imperial session. I think he was the best moderator in the entire GKIEP forum. So let's give a round of applause. And don't forget the stars of the session, Gambold and Haekyung, Marianne, me and my team from the bottom of our hearts. We really appreciate all you gave your time and your efforts, your contributions, not just for this session, but for the Republic of Korea itself. The UN has been with Korea since the very beginning of Korea, from 1950, and I hope this relation continues forever throughout for a very, very long time. So, moving on, we will continue with the closing ceremony for the 2022 Global Korea Forum. I will give the microphone to Mr. Kim In-kyo, the Executive Chairperson of the Global Korean Forum. 계획 세션에 이어서 이에 바로 2022년 글로벌 코리아 포럼 폐회식을 이어나가겠습니다.
We are now going to begin the closing ceremony for the 2022 Global Korea Forum.
예, 안녕하십니까.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen.
집행위원장을 맡고 있는
I am the chair of the steering committee for GKF. My name is Kim Il-kyo. It is a pleasure to meet all of you. Korea is hoping to become a global pivotal state, and that is why we have discussed here our responsibility going forward, and the government, think tanks, public institutions, and also ambassadors from many Asian countries, about over 10 Asian countries, and IOs and multilateral organizations all gathered here today, yesterday, and today. Over the span of 3 days, we've had intense discussions. We'd like to thank everyone who has been with us throughout the entirety of the events, both offline and offline, all of our distinguished guests and participants. Thank you very much. We now like to invite Chairperson Jung Hae-gu of the NRC for his closing remarks of GKF. Chairperson, please give him a big round of applause.
예, 여러분 수고 많았습니다.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
지난 23일부터 25일
Now, the Global Korea Forum was held for 3 days since the 23rd.
이제 마무리됩니다.
And the 2022 Global Korea Forum has come to its conclusion. I would like to once again thank all the participants and attendants at this forum. In the past 3 days of forum, we have had the national institutions and the public institutions, total 14 institutions, including the Korea Institute for International Economic Policy, hosting and holding conferences, workshops, and so forth. Now, in the conferences, we have had discussions among the international organizations as well as regional institutions, for example, in Europe, and then discussing such topics as climate change, gender equality, and also development cooperation. And in the roundtable, together with the 10 ASEAN ambassadors, we discussed the direction for the Korea-ASEAN cooperation. And in the special sessions, we have had the participation by the heads of international organizations to discuss Korea's role as a global pivotal state. And we have also had the Development Cooperation Day awarding ceremony led by the Office of the Government Policy Coordination. We have also had the ODA workshop. So I would like to once again thank all the speakers and the discussants for taking part in all these conferences and workshops and ceremonies. Thank you very much for your contribution and enhancing the direction of Korea's development cooperation. And I would also like to thank all the institutes and organizers of the different sessions. Now, as we all know, the global environment is undergoing rapid changes. Whether they are for better or worse, that is yet to tell. But what is for sure is, no matter the circumstances, international development cooperation must be strengthened and must continue. And for Korea, which aspires to be a global pivotal state for freedom, peace, and prosperity, it means that our role in international development cooperation must also strengthen. I do hope that the various discussions that have been held at these forums in the different sessions will be duly reflected in setting our direction and orientation for the future development cooperation. And of course, Korea's challenges should be challenges for the future. As many more challenges are expected in the post-COVID era, I do believe that Korea's role should also be set at addressing some of these global challenges. And of course, Korea's development cooperation effort should be one that is inclusive of all the different stakeholders. With the COVID-19 and also because of the geopolitical situation, we are seeing sharpening conflicts and confrontation. Amidst this, Korea must make sure that its development cooperation will be one that is inclusive with partners in different parts of the world. Once again, I see that many members of the staff have given so much of their work and efforts to enable this conference. And as it is with these international conferences, their efforts are so valuable and noteworthy. So I would like to give them a big round of applause for their hidden efforts and contribution. So thank you very much for your hard work for the past 3 days. And 1 year later, next year, I would like to see you again at the next year's installment of the Global Korea Forum. Thank you very much.
큰 박수 부탁드립니다.
Please give him another big round of applause.
예, 그럼 제가 2022 글로벌 코리아
Now, as chair,
하겠습니다.
I would like to officially announce the closing of the 2022 Global Korea Forum.
예.
For the past 3 days, the 2022 Global Korea Forum has discussed the theme of international development cooperation for freedom, peace, and prosperity. We have shared Korea's international cooperative experience and our accomplishments, and we have discussed the role and responsibility of Korea as a global pivotal state. As we've planned in August, the 2022 Global Korea Forum was carried out in a safe manner with mutual consideration for others and in compliance with the government's COVID-19 principles. Following last year's forum, this year's 2022 Global Korea Forum was a forum for all of us. It is all of our achievement. We will take all of the proposals that were offered through each of the sessions and present them to all of the relevant institutions. Thank you to all of our participants. And with this, I officially declare the closing of the 2022 Global Korea Forum. Thank you.
We need to get up on stage and take a photo for everyone. Is that